The restaurant was closing. Outside, snowflakes danced in the icy wind, but inside, one man refused to leave. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Today's special shout-out goes to Mary Gates watching all the way from California. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. Also, let me tell you something funny. Someone actually bet that I can't reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of this year, and honestly, I want to prove them wrong. So if you're watching this right now and you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button and join the family. Reaching 1,000 subscribers is a very personal goal for me, and your support would mean the world to me. Thank you for believing in me and being part of this journey. Nathaniel Hayes sat perfectly still at table 7, a corner booth with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Manhattan skyline like a living painting. Christmas lights blinked across the distant buildings, their warm glow softened by the falling snow. The crystal glass of untouched Cabernet before him caught the candlelight, casting ruby shadows across the white tablecloth. He checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. She was nearly 2 hours late. Around him, the restaurant had transformed from the bustling energy of Christmas Eve dinner service into something quieter, more intimate. Tables sat empty now, their pristine settings waiting for tomorrow's guests. The soft murmur of departing diners had faded to silence, broken only by the gentle clink of silverware as servers cleared the last occupied tables. Through the kitchen's swinging doors, he could hear the muffled sounds of cleanup, the rush of water, the clatter of dishes, the tired voices of staff eager to return to their own families. His phone buzzed for the 20th time. Nathaniel glanced at the screen without picking it up. Marcus, still there? Man, she's not coming. Jessica, Nate, come to the party. Forget about her. Unknown number, your car is waiting outside whenever you're ready, Mr. Hayes. He silenced the phone and slid it face down across the table. The maitre d' approached, a silver-haired gentleman named Vincent who'd managed Le Lumiere for 30 years and had probably seen every variation of human behavior a fancy restaurant could witness. His expression carried professional sympathy with just a hint of concern. Mr. Hayes, Vincent said gently, I'm afraid we'll be closing shortly. Perhaps I could call your driver? Or we could arrange. 5 more minutes, Nathaniel interrupted, his voice quiet but certain. Vincent hesitated, then nodded. Of course, sir. Another 5 minutes. Nathaniel watched him retreat, moving between tables with practiced grace. The question hung in the air, unspoken but present. Why are you still here? It was a fair question. Nathaniel Hayes didn't wait for anyone. As the founder and CEO of Hayes Capital Management, he'd built a billion-dollar empire on decisive action and impeccable timing. His life ran on precision, meetings scheduled to the minute, investments calculated to the decimal point, every moment accounted for and optimized. People waited for him, not the other way around. And yet, here he sat. He replayed the conversation with Marcus from 3 weeks ago. His best friend since college, Marcus Chin knew him better than almost anyone, knew his patterns, his defenses, the carefully constructed walls he'd built around himself after clawing his way up from a childhood of instability and uncertainty. I know someone perfect for you, Marcus had said over drinks at their usual bar. Elena Moore. She volunteers at the shelter where my wife donates. Nate, I'm telling you, she's different. Genuine. The kind of person who still believes in doing the right thing even when no one's watching. Nathaniel had laughed it off initially. He'd been set up before. Blind dates with socialites who wanted his money, entrepreneurs who wanted his connections, influencers who wanted his spotlight, beautiful faces with hollow conversations, carefully curated personas that dissolved under the slightest scrutiny. But Marcus had been insistent. Just meet her. One dinner. Christmas Eve at Le Lumiere. If there's nothing there, you walk away. But Nate, I have a feeling about this one. A feeling. Nathaniel had built his fortune on data, analysis, and cold hard facts. Feelings were unreliable. Feelings led to mistakes. And yet, That same inexplicable intuition that had guided his best investments, the subtle sense when something was right even before the numbers proved it, whispered that Elena Moore was worth meeting. He'd agreed. One dinner. One chance. Now, watching the snow accumulate on the sidewalk outside, Nathaniel questioned his judgment. 2 hours late without a word. Most people would have left after 30 minutes. Any reasonable person would have given up by now. But something held him there. Marcus hadn't just described Elena's kindness in passing. He'd told stories, how she'd fought the city council to keep the shelter open, how she personally paid for surgeries for animals that would otherwise be euthanized, how she'd taken in her younger brother after their parents died and somehow balanced it all while studying veterinary medicine part-time. Marcus's wife, Jennifer, spoke of Elena with something close to reverence. She's the person who makes you believe in people again. Nathaniel's phone buzzed again. He ignored it, taking a slow sip of the wine that had long since reached room temperature. Outside, the snow fell heavier now, each flake caught in the glow of streetlights before disappearing into the white blanket covering the city. A couple hurried past the window, bundled against the cold, laughing as they struggled with a shared umbrella. Yellow cabs splashed through slush, their lights leaving golden streaks in the dark. Somewhere in the distance, church bells chimed 9 o'clock. Christmas Eve in New York. Everywhere, families gathered around dinner tables. Friends clinked glasses at holiday parties. Children pressed their faces against windows, watching for a glimpse of reindeer in the sky. And Nathaniel Hayes sat alone in an emptying restaurant, waiting for a woman he'd never met. But he turned the question over in his mind, examining it from different angles the way he would analyze a potential acquisition. What was he really doing here? Was this about Elena, or was it about something else? Some deep-seated need to prove that genuine connections still existed in a world where everything felt transactional? A rebellion against the cynicism that had gradually calcified around his heart? Or maybe, and this thought unsettled him more than he wanted to admit, maybe he was simply lonely. Wealth had brought him many things: security he'd never known as a child, opportunities beyond imagination, the ability to shape his own destiny. But it had also brought isolation. Every interaction tinged with ulterior motives. Every new relationship shadowed by questions of authenticity. Did they see him, or did they see the portfolio, the penthouse, the power? Marcus had promised that Elena didn't even know his last name. Just Nathaniel, a friend of a friend, someone Jennifer thought she'd get along with. No internet stalking. No preconceptions. Just two people meeting for dinner. It was terrifying. It was also exactly what he needed. The kitchen doors swung open, and a server emerged, a young woman with tired eyes and a strained smile. She approached his table cautiously. "Mr. Hayes, can I get you anything else? More wine? Perhaps an appetizer while you wait?" Nathaniel shook his head. "I'm fine, thank you." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Sir, I don't mean to overstep, but we've all been watching you wait. I just wanted to say, I hope she comes. Anyone who has someone willing to wait like this? They're lucky." The kindness in her words caught him off guard. He managed a small smile. "Thank you." As she walked away, Nathaniel felt the weight of the evening settle more heavily on his shoulders. The logical part of his brain, the part that had made him a billionaire before 40, screamed that this was foolish. Cut your losses. Move on. There are 1,000 explanations for her absence, none of them good. She forgot. She got cold feet. She found out who you are and decided the whole thing was too complicated. She never intended to come at all. But another part of him, quieter but more insistent, held firm. She's worth waiting for. He didn't know why he believed it. He'd never seen her face, never heard her voice, knew nothing about her beyond second-hand stories. Yet somehow, the certainty remained. Call it intuition, call it foolishness, call it whatever you wanted. Nathaniel believed that when Elena Moore finally walked through that door, everything would make sense. If she walked through that door. He checked his watch again. 9:04 p.m. Vincent appeared once more, approaching with visible reluctance. "Mr. Hayes, I'm so sorry but—" "I'll cover everyone's overtime," Nathaniel said, not looking up from the window. The servers, the kitchen staff, everyone. Double their hourly rate for however long this takes. Plus holiday bonuses. Vincent's mouth opened, then closed. That's very generous, sir, but it's Christmas Eve. They have families. Then ask them, Nathaniel interrupted, finally meeting Vincent's eyes. Ask if anyone's willing to stay. I'm not leaving. Not yet. Something in his expression must have conveyed the depth of his conviction, because Vincent simply nodded and disappeared toward the kitchen. 8 miles across the city, Elena Moore stood in front of her bedroom mirror and fought the urge to cancel. Her hands trembled slightly as she fastened the clasp of her grandmother's silver necklace, the only piece of jewelry she'd kept after the funeral. The modest black dress she'd chosen hung on her frame, slightly looser than when she'd last worn it to a formal event years ago. When had she last had time to eat properly? Between shifts at the shelter, night classes, and making sure Liam had everything he needed. You look beautiful, a voice said from the doorway. Elena turned to find her friend and roommate, Sofia Rodriguez, leaning against the frame with arms crossed and a knowing smile on her face. I look tired, Elena corrected, turning back to the mirror. Dark circles shadowed her eyes despite her best efforts with concealer. Her hair, which she tried to style into something elegant, already showed signs of rebellion. I should cancel. This is ridiculous. I don't have time for dating. I don't have time for yourself. Sophia interrupted, moving into the room. For happiness? For one single night where you're not Elena the shelter manager, or Elena the sister, or Elena the veterinary student, but just Elena? Elena sank onto the edge of her bed, suddenly exhausted. It's been 3 years, Soph. 3 years since Mom and Dad died. 3 years of trying to keep everything together. Liam's doing well in school now. The shelter's finally stable. I'm almost done with my degree. Why rock the boat? Because you're 31 years old and you deserve more than just survival, Sophia said firmly, sitting beside her. You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are. Someone who appreciates that you're the kind of person who shows up for everyone else. I don't even know this guy, Elena protested weakly. What's his name again? Nathan? Nathaniel? Nathaniel, Sophia confirmed. And according to Jennifer, he's kind, successful, and genuinely interested in meeting you. She wouldn't set you up with just anyone. You know how protective she is. Elena did know. Jennifer Chen had become something of a guardian angel to the shelter, advocating for funding and resources when government support dried up. More than that, she'd become a friend, one of the few people who seemed to understand the weight Elena carried. He's not looking for arm candy or a trophy wife, Jennifer had said when proposing the blind date. He's looking for something real. And I think you might surprise each other. Something real. The words lingered in Elena's mind, equal parts terrifying and tantalizing. What if I've forgotten how to do this? She whispered. What if I don't know how to be the person he's expecting? What if... Stop, Sophia commanded, grabbing both of Elena's hands. Listen to me. You're going to go to that restaurant. You're going to meet this man. And whatever happens, happens. But you're going to give yourself this chance, Elena. Just this once, you're going to choose yourself first. Promise me. Elena looked into her friend's fierce, loving eyes and felt something crack in her chest, the armor she'd worn for so long, the belief that her own happiness had to come last. Okay, she breathed. Okay, I'll go. Sophia grinned. Good. Now finish getting ready. Your car will be here in 15 minutes. As Sophia left to check on Liam, Elena returned to the mirror. She touched the silver necklace at her throat, remembering her mother's words, "Love finds you when you're brave enough to let it, Mija." Outside her window, snow began to fall over Queens, the first flakes of what weathermen promised would be a significant storm. Elena watched them dance in the streetlight, delicate and determined, each one finding its way to earth despite the wind. She took a deep breath, grabbed her coat, and headed for the door. Across the city, in a restaurant that should have closed, Nathaniel Hayes checked his watch one more time and decided to wait just a little longer. 9:17 p.m. Vincent had returned from the kitchen with unexpected news. 3 servers had volunteered to stay, along with one-line cook who apparently had nowhere else to be on Christmas Eve. They'd reopen the kitchen, just enough to keep coffee hot and perhaps prepare something simple if needed. Nathaniel had insisted on tripling their overtime rate. Now he sat in the near-empty dining room, watching the snow accumulate on windowsills and car roofs below. The storm had intensified, transforming the city into something from a snow globe. Beautiful and isolating in equal measure. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was his assistant. "Mr. Hayes, the roads are getting dangerous. Should I have your driver return to the garage?" Nathaniel typed back, "Have him wait. I'll need him soon." So, the word felt like a lie even as he sent it. He thought about Elena again, constructing an image from the fragments Marcus and Jennifer had provided. 24 years old. No, wait, Marcus had said 31. Had he remembered that wrong? She worked at an animal shelter in Queens. She'd lost both parents young and taken in her younger brother. She was studying veterinary medicine while working full-time. She believed in second chances, in fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Someone who values responsibility over convenience. Jennifer's words echoed in his mind. At the time, he'd appreciated the description. So many people in his world prioritized convenience above all else. But now, sitting alone as the minutes ticked past, he wondered if that same sense of responsibility might be keeping her away. What if something had happened? What if someone needed her, and she'd chosen them over this? Over him? The thought didn't make him angry. Strangely, it made him respect her more. If Elena Moore was the kind of person who would sacrifice her own happiness to help someone else, then she was exactly who Marcus had promised she'd be. And if that quality meant Nathaniel had to wait a little longer, then waiting was what he'd do. He just hoped she'd eventually arrive. 8 miles away, Elena Moore's phone wouldn't stop ringing. She stood frozen in the doorway of her apartment, coat half on, watching the screen light up with the shelter's number for the third time in 2 minutes. Sophia appeared from the living room, concern etched across her face. "Don't answer it," Sophia said firmly. Whatever it is, someone else can handle it. You have plans. You have a life." But Elena was already swiping to accept the call. "This is Elena." "Elena, thank God." The voice belonged to Marcus Patterson, the weekend volunteer coordinator. His usually calm tone carried an edge of panic. "I know it's Christmas Eve, I know you're off tonight, but we have an emergency. It's Bear." Elena's heart clenched. "What happened?" "He's not eating. Hasn't moved from the corner of his kennel all day. He's breathing shallow, won't respond to anyone. Dr. Chin came in to check on him earlier and—" "Elena, she scheduled him for euthanasia first thing tomorrow morning." "What?" Elena's voice cracked. No, Dr. Chin wouldn't." "Budget cuts," Marcus interrupted, his words heavy with resignation. "The board voted yesterday. Any animal requiring emergency medical care exceeding $500 they get put down. Bear's blood work showed kidney failure. Treatment would cost thousands. The decision was already made." Elena closed her eyes, seeing Bear's face in her mind, the elderly German Shepherd mix who'd been surrendered 3 months ago when his owner entered hospice care. Bear, who'd spent his whole life as a therapy dog visiting hospitals, who still tried to comfort every person who walked past his kennel despite his own failing health. Bear, who deserved better than to die alone in a shelter on Christmas Eve. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she heard herself say. "Elena, you don't have to." 20 minutes. She ended the call and looked up to find Sophia staring at her with an expression that mixed frustration with understanding. "Don't," Elena said before Sophia could speak. "Don't tell me I should let someone else handle it. Don't tell me I deserve one night off. I know all that. But it's Bear's stuff. He doesn't have someone else. He just has me." Sophia's expression softened. "What about your date? What about Nathaniel?" Elena grabbed her bag, her mind already racing through logistics, medications she'd need, the emergency vet clinic that might still be open, how to buy Bear enough time to find a rescue organization willing to take him. "I'll text Jennifer. I'll explain. He'll understand. And if he doesn't?" Elena paused at the door, her hand on the knob. "Then he's not the right person anyway." But even as she said it, something twisted painfully in her chest. The disappointment wasn't just about missing dinner, it was about missing the possibility of something more. For once, she'd allowed herself to hope. To imagine that maybe, just maybe, she could have something for herself. Someone who might understand the life she'd built, the sacrifices she'd made, the way her heart had learned to break and mend and break again for creatures who couldn't speak their pain. "I'll be back as soon as I can," she promised, though she had no idea if that was true. "If there's still time I'll go. But right now I have to." "I know," Sophia said gently, pulling her into a quick hug. "Go. Save him. Just text Nathaniel, okay? Let him know you're not standing him up." Elena nodded, already halfway out the door. Nathaniel watched the last table of diners depart into the snowy night. 9:43 p.m. The restaurant was officially closed now, though Vincent had graciously kept the lights low and the ambience intact. One of the servers, a college student named Marie, brought Nathaniel a fresh cup of coffee without being asked. She set it down with a sympathetic smile. "My boyfriend once waited 4 hours for me at the airport," she offered. "I'd missed my flight, lost my phone charger, couldn't call him. He just waited. Bought a book and camped out at arrivals." She paused, her smile widening. "We got married last summer." Nathaniel found himself returning the smile. "So you're saying there's hope?" "I'm saying the people worth waiting for usually have a good reason for being late." After she left, Nathaniel considered her words. He pulled out his phone, half expecting to find a message from Elena explaining, apologizing, canceling. But there was nothing. Just more texts from friends asking if he'd finally admitted defeat, more emails from colleagues who apparently worked through Christmas Eve, more reminders of the world that kept spinning while he sat suspended in this strange pocket of time. He could leave. Should leave. The rational thing was to accept that something had gone wrong. She'd changed her mind, forgotten, been unable to make it. These things happened. Adults moved on. But Nathaniel thought about the stories Marcus had told. Elena fighting the city council to save the shelter's funding, her voice steady even when the vote seemed lost. Elena taking night classes after 12-hour shifts because she'd promised herself she'd finish her degree. Elena choosing to raise her brother instead of pursuing the easier path of letting the state handle it. Elena showing up. That's what Marcus had emphasized. She shows up. For everyone. Every time. So if Elena Moore wasn't here yet, there was a reason. And that reason mattered more than punctuality, more than social convention, more than anything his rational mind could calculate. Nathaniel settled back in his seat, cradling the warm coffee cup between his palms. "I'll wait," he said to the empty restaurant, to himself, to the universe. Just a little longer. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in white silence. And somewhere across those snow-covered streets, Elena Moore fought to save a life, unaware that 8 miles away, a man she'd never met was proving himself worthy of her by doing the one thing that mattered most. He stayed. Elena's hands were still shaking as she pulled away from the emergency vet clinic at 10:47 p.m. Bear was stable, barely, but stable. She'd maxed out her credit card on the initial treatment and signed papers promising payment for the rest. Behind her, through the clinic's lit windows, she could see Bear's sedated form breathing steadily, finally peaceful. Now she had a choice to make. Her phone sat in the cup holder, screen dark. She hadn't texted Nathaniel. Hadn't called. In the chaos of the last 2 hours, administering fluids, holding Bear steady while the vet drew blood, making impossible financial decisions, she'd forgotten everything else. The blind date. The restaurant. The man who was probably long gone by now. It was past 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Any reasonable person would have left hours ago. Elena gripped the steering wheel, exhaustion washing over her in waves. Her black dress was wrinkled and stained with mud from kneeling on the clinic floor. Her carefully styled hair had come loose, strands falling around her face. She could smell the shelter on her clothes, antiseptic and wet dog and something indefinable that just meant animal. Her makeup, what little she'd worn, had probably smudged beyond recognition. She looked like a disaster. She felt like a disaster. The smart thing would be to go home. Text an apology tomorrow. Explain what happened and hope Jennifer wouldn't hate her for wasting everyone's time. Maybe they could reschedule, though Elena suspected that ship had sailed. No one wanted to date someone who couldn't even show up to a first meeting. But something made her pull out her phone and search for the restaurant's address. Billionaire, Manhattan. 40 minutes away in good weather. Probably an hour in this storm. He's not there, the rational voice in her head insisted. No one waits 3 hours for a stranger. Yet her hands were already programming the GPS. Nathaniel had stopped checking his watch. 11:04 p.m. The restaurant had taken on a dreamlike quality in the late hour. Vincent had dimmed most of the lights, leaving only the Christmas decorations glowing, strings of warm white lights wrapped around columns, candles flickering on empty tables, the soft gleam of the city beyond the windows. Marie and the other servers had made themselves comfortable at a corner table, quietly playing cards while the line cook read a paperback in the kitchen doorway. They'd all decided to wait with him. Nathaniel wasn't sure when the evening had transformed from his solitary vigil into something collective, but he was grateful for it. These strangers had given up their Christmas Eve, not for the money, though he'd paid them well, but for something else. Or curiosity. Or perhaps just the simple human desire to see how the story ended. His coffee had gone cold again. He didn't care. The snow had finally begun to ease, leaving the city wrapped in pristine white silence. A few cars passed on the street below, their headlights cutting through the dark. Somewhere in the distance, church bells marked the late hour. Nathaniel's phone buzzed. Another message from Marcus. Nate, please tell me you're not still there. He typed back, still here. The response came immediately, you're insane. I love you, but you're insane. Maybe he was. Nathaniel had built his empire on calculated risks, on knowing when to hold and when to fold. This wasn't calculated. This was pure instinct, stubborn faith in something he couldn't quantify or explain. Vincent approached the table, his professional composure finally showing cracks of genuine concern. Mr. Hayes, it's past 11. Even if she intended to come, the roads are nearly impassable now. Perhaps. The restaurant door opened. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the doorway, snow-dusted and breathless, her coat hanging open over a rumpled black dress. Her dark hair fell in disheveled waves around her face, and her eyes, wide and uncertain and achingly hopeful, swept the empty restaurant until they found him. Nathaniel stood. For a moment, neither of them moved. The distance between the door and his table felt simultaneously infinite and non-existent. He took in every detail, the mud on her knees, the exhaustion in her shoulders, the way she clutched her bag like a lifeline. She wasn't polished or perfect. She looked like someone who'd been through a battle. She looked real. Nathaniel. Her voice carried across the quiet restaurant, tentative and raw. Elena. He didn't know how he knew for certain, but he did. This was her. She took 3 steps forward, then stopped, words tumbling out in a rush. I am so sorry. I know I'm horribly late. I know this is unforgivable. I tried to text, but everything happened so fast and She stopped, seeming to register the empty restaurant, the servers watching from their corner table, the impossible fact that he was still there. You waited. It wasn't a question. It was wonder, disbelief, something that made Nathaniel's chest tighten. I did, he said simply. Elena's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back quickly, laughing, a sound caught between joy and exhaustion. You must think I'm the worst person in the world. Actually, Nathaniel said, moving around the table toward her, I think you're probably the best. Come sit down. Please. She hesitated, glancing down at herself. I'm a mess. I smell like you've been somewhere important, he finished. Sit. Tell me what happened. Vincent materialized with his characteristic timing, pulling out Elena's chair with a smile that suggested he'd been personally invested in this outcome. Marie appeared with a fresh pot of coffee and 2 cups, her eyes sparkling with barely contained excitement. Elena sank into the chair, and Nathaniel returned to his seat across from her. In the candlelight, he could see her more clearly now, the fine lines of stress around her eyes, the determined set of her jaw, the way her fingers trembled slightly as she accepted the coffee Marie poured. There was an emergency at the shelter, Elena began, wrapping both hands around the warm cup. A dog, Bear, his name is Bear. He's been sick for weeks, but tonight he crashed. The board had already scheduled him for euthanasia tomorrow morning because treatment costs too much. I couldn't. She paused, her voice catching. I couldn't let him die alone on Christmas Eve. Not after everything he's been through. Nathaniel leaned forward. Is he okay? Stable. For now. I took him to an emergency vet clinic, maxed out my credit card on fluids and blood work and pain medication. He'll need more treatment, and I have no idea how I'm going to pay for it, but at least he's alive. At least he has a chance. She looked up, meeting Nathaniel's eyes directly. I should have called you. Should have explained. But in the moment I forgot about everything else. Good, Nathaniel said. Elena blinked. Good. Marcus told me you were someone who shows up for people. Who values doing the right thing over convenience. He smiled slightly. He was right. You showed up for Bear. That matters more than showing up here on time. Something shifted in Elena's expression, surprise giving way to cautious hope. Most people wouldn't see it that way. I'm not most people. No, she agreed softly, studying him with new attention. You're not. You waited 3 hours for someone you've never met. Who does that? Someone who believes in second chances, Nathaniel said. Someone who thinks maybe the best things in life are worth waiting for. They held each other's gaze for a long moment. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft flakes drifting past the windows. The restaurant felt like its own world now, separate from the city, from time, from everything but this conversation. I don't know how to do this, Elena admitted quietly. It's been so long since I've put myself first for anything. Since I've even thought about this. Dating. Connection. I have a brother who needs me, animals who depend on me, classes and work and 1,000 responsibilities that don't stop just because it's Christmas Eve. Tell me about your brother, Nathaniel said. Elena's expression softened immediately. Liam. He's 17 now. He was 14 when our parents died. Car accident, black ice, they were gone before we could even say goodbye. Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup. I was 28, just starting vet school, had my whole life planned out. And suddenly I was a guardian, a parent, everything. The state wanted to put him in foster care, but I couldn't let that happen. So I dropped out of school, got a full-time job at the shelter, became an adult overnight. That must have been terrifying. It was. It still is sometimes. Elena smiled sadly. But Liam is amazing. He's thriving now, honor roll, soccer team, college applications going out in the fall. He's going to do incredible things. I just had to make sure he got the chance. At the expense of your own chances, Nathaniel observed. Someone had to sacrifice something, Elena said. Might as well be me. Nathaniel shook his head slowly. That's where you're wrong. How so? Because sacrifice isn't the same as martyrdom. You can take care of people you love and still take care of yourself. You can show up for them and still show up for you. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Elena, from what I've heard, and from what I've seen tonight, you're the kind of person who gives everything to everyone else. But eventually, you have to let someone give something back to you. Elena's eyes glistened again. Is that what you're offering? To give something back? I'm offering to try, Nathaniel said honestly. I'm offering to be someone who understands that life doesn't fit into neat schedules. Someone who waits when waiting matters. Why? The question was barely a whisper. Why me? You don't even know me. Nathaniel considered this. How could he explain the inexplicable? The way Marcus's stories had sparked something in him. The intuition that had kept him seated in an empty restaurant for 3 hours. The certainty he'd felt the moment she walked through that door. Because I've spent my whole life around people who say the right things, he said finally. People who know how to perform, how to package themselves, how to be exactly what someone wants them to be. And I'm tired of it. I want real. I want someone who shows up covered in mud because they were saving a life. Someone who forgets about a date because something more important happened. Someone who... He stopped, surprised by the emotion in his own voice. Someone who what? Elena prompted gently. Someone who reminds me why any of this matters, Nathaniel finished. The money, the success, all of it. What's the point if you can't use it to help people? To make a difference? You do that every day, Elena. You save lives. You sacrifice. You show up. And I want to be worthy of that. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of recognition, of two people seeing each other clearly for the first time. I should tell you, Nathaniel continued, that I'm not exactly easy either. I work too much. I have trust issues that would probably require therapy to unpack. I've built walls so high that most people give up trying to climb them. He smiled ruefully. Marcus probably should have mentioned all that. Elena laughed. A real laugh this time, warm and genuine. Well, I'm drowning in debt, I smell like dog half the time, and my idea of a wild Friday night is reorganizing shelter files. So I think we're even. Perfect, Nathaniel said. Sounds like we're both disasters pretending to have it together. Sounds about right. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily now. Elena told him about her parents, her dreams of opening her own veterinary practice someday, the way Liam had taught her that family wasn't just blood but choice. Nathaniel shared pieces of himself he rarely showed anyone. His childhood of instability, the drive that had pushed him to succeed, the loneliness that came with wealth and power. Everyone wants something from me, he admitted. Investments, connections, access. It's exhausting, always wondering what someone's angle is. Always being on guard. I don't want anything from you, Elena said. Except maybe for you to tell me more about why you actually stayed. The real reason. Nathaniel met her eyes. Because I had a feeling. That's it. Just a feeling that you were worth waiting for. That if I left, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. And now? Was the feeling right? He smiled. Ask me in 50 years. Elena's breath caught. 50 years is a long time. Good thing I'm patient. Outside, the snow had stopped completely. The city sparkled under its white blanket, Christmas lights reflecting off pristine drifts. Inside Le Lumiere, Vincent and the servers had quietly disappeared, giving them privacy while remaining close enough to provide coffee refills. Elena checked her phone and gasped. It's almost 1 a.m. I've kept you, kept everyone, here for hours. Best hours I've spent in years, Nathaniel said truthfully. She looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw the moment she made her decision. Whatever walls she'd built, whatever defenses she'd maintained, they were coming down. Nathaniel Hayes, she said slowly, testing his full name for the first time. Will you go on a second date with me? One where I actually show up on time. Only if you let me pay for Bear's treatment, he countered. Elena stiffened. I can't accept that. I don't even know you. You will, he said simply. And when you do, you'll understand that I'm not offering out of pity or charity. I'm offering because that dog is important to you, and what's important to you is becoming important to me. That's how this works, Elena. We show up for each other. Tears spilled over this time, tracking down her cheeks. You're going to make me fall in love with you, aren't you? I'm certainly going to try. She laughed through her tears, and Nathaniel felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like coming home. They left Le Lumiere together at 1:30 a.m., stepping into a transformed city. The snow had turned Manhattan into a winter wonderland, silent and magical. Nathaniel's car was waiting, his patient driver ready to take them wherever they needed to go. Can I give you a ride home? Nathaniel asked. Elena hesitated, then smiled. Actually, could we stop by the emergency clinic first? I just want to check on Bear one more time. Of course, Nathaniel said, and offered her his arm. As they walked to the car, leaving footprints in fresh snow, neither noticed Vincent watching from the restaurant window, smiling like he'd just witnessed the beginning of something extraordinary. Because he had. The emergency clinic was quiet when they arrived, the overnight staff moving through their rounds with practiced efficiency. Elena signed in at the desk while Nathaniel hung back, watching her interact with the veterinary technician. The easy rapport, the genuine concern in her questions, the way her entire face lit up when told Bear was resting comfortably. Can we see him? Elena asked. Just for a moment? The technician glanced at Nathaniel, then back to Elena, clearly weighing protocol against compassion. 5 minutes. He needs rest, but I think seeing you might do him good. They followed her through a set of double doors into the recovery area. The smell hit Nathaniel immediately, antiseptic and medicine and animal, the same scent that clung to Elena's clothes. But he found he didn't mind it. This was her world, and he wanted to understand it. Bear lay in a large kennel in the corner, in 4-line running into his front leg. The German Shepherd mix raised his head when Elena approached, his tail managing a weak thump against the blanket beneath him. "Hey, buddy," Elena whispered, kneeling beside the kennel. She slipped her fingers through the bars, and Bear nuzzled them gently. "You scared me tonight, but you're going to be okay now. I promise." Nathaniel crouched beside her, studying the elderly dog. Bear's muzzle was grayed with age, his eyes clouded but still warm. This was what Elena had chosen over their date. This life, this creature who depended on her. "He's a therapy dog," Elena said softly, still stroking Bear's nose. "Spent 12 years visiting hospitals and nursing homes. When his owner went into hospice, the family surrendered him to us. Can you imagine? Spending your whole life helping people, and in the end being abandoned." "Not anymore," Nathaniel said quietly. He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "I'm having my assistant contact the best veterinary cardiologist in the state. Bear's going to get whatever treatment he needs." Elena turned to him, tears streaming freely now. "Nathaniel, we talked about this," he said gently. "About showing up for each other. This is me showing up, Elena. Let me do this." She nodded, unable to speak, and turned back to Bear. The dog had closed his eyes again, breathing steadily, his tail still thumping weakly. Elena pressed her forehead against the kennel bars. "You're going to live, Bear," she whispered. "You're going to have the best Christmas present ever, a second chance." They stayed another few minutes before the technician gently reminded them that Bear needed rest. As they left, Elena took one last look back at the sleeping dog, then slipped her hand into Nathaniel's. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. 3 months later, spring had arrived in New York, melting the last remnants of winter and painting the city in shades of green and gold. Elena stood in the shelter's main adoption area, watching through the window as Bear, fully recovered and energetic, played with a family considering adoption. The elderly shepherd moved with a grace that belied his age, his tail wagging as 2 young children laughed and threw a tennis ball. "He's found his people," Sophia said, appearing at Elena's shoulder. "Look at him. He knows." Elena smiled, blinking back the familiar sting of tears. Every adoption was bittersweet, joy mixed with the ache of letting go. But Bear deserved this. After everything he'd been through, he deserved a family who would love him through whatever time he had left. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathaniel. "Dinner tonight? I have a surprise." She typed back, "Only if we can bring Bear to visit first. The Hendersons are adopting him today, and I want you to say goodbye. Wouldn't miss it. Pick you up at 6? Perfect." The last 3 months had been a revelation. Nathaniel had integrated into her life with surprising ease, showing up at the shelter to volunteer, attending Liam's soccer games, sitting beside her during late-night study sessions for her veterinary exams. He'd met her world with open arms, never asking her to change or compromise the things that mattered most. And slowly, carefully, she'd let him into her heart. "You're thinking about him," Sophia observed with a knowing smile. "I'm always thinking about him," Elena admitted. "Is that crazy? We've only been dating 3 months." "When you know," Sophia said simply. "And you know." She did know. That was the terrifying, wonderful truth of it. That evening, Nathaniel's car pulled up to the shelter precisely at 6. He emerged wearing jeans and a simple sweater. He'd learned early that his usual designer suits attracted too much attention from the dogs, who apparently loved expensive fabric. Elena laughed as he crouched to greet Bear, who bounded over with the enthusiasm of a puppy despite his age. "Look at you," Nathaniel said, ruffling Bear's ears. 3 months ago, you could barely stand. Now you're showing off." Bear barked happily, then ran back to the Hendersons, who were completing the final adoption paperwork. Elena watched the scene with bittersweet joy. Bear had become a symbol of so many things. The night she met Nathaniel, the power of second chances, the way love could heal even the deepest wounds. "Ready?" Nathaniel asked, offering his hand. "Ready," Elena confirmed. But instead of heading to his car, Nathaniel led her in a different direction. "We're walking tonight." "Walking where?" "You'll see." They strolled through the city as evening settled in, the spring air warm and filled with the sounds of life returning after winter's silence. Elena didn't press for details, content to simply be beside him, their fingers interlaced, their steps synchronized. When they turned the corner and she saw Le Lumiere ahead, her heart skipped. "Nathaniel, what?" "Trust me," he said softly. Vincent greeted them at the door with a smile that suggested he'd been expecting them. "Mr. Hayes, Ms. Moore. Welcome back." The restaurant looked different in spring, the Christmas lights replaced by soft candlelight, the snow-covered views replaced by the golden glow of sunset. But table 7 remained the same, set for two, a single candle flickering in the center. Elena felt tears prick her eyes as they sat in the same seats they'd occupied that first night. "You brought me back." "I wanted to show you something," Nathaniel said. He gestured to the window, to the city beyond. "Do you remember what this view looked like that night? Everything covered in snow. Cold. Uncertain. We had no idea what was coming." "I remember," Elena whispered. "Look at it now." The city glowed in the fading light, vibrant and alive. "Everything changes, Elena. Seasons turn. Life moves forward. But some things, the important things, they stay constant." He reached across the table, taking both her hands in his. "I stayed at this table for 3 hours that night because something told me you were worth waiting for. And I was right. You're worth every moment, every sacrifice, every leap of faith. You're worth everything." Elena's breath caught as Nathaniel stood and moved around the table. He knelt beside her chair, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "I know it's only been 3 months," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I know that by every rational measure, this is too fast, too soon. But I also know that the best decision I ever made was waiting for you. And I want to spend the rest of my life continuing to wait, for you to finish your degree, for Liam to graduate, for Bear to play in whatever backyard we end up with. I want to wait through every delay, every emergency, every moment when life doesn't go according to plan. Because with you, Elena, even the waiting is worth it." He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the candlelight, elegant and simple, exactly her style. "Elena Moore, will you marry me?" The restaurant had gone silent. Elena realized distantly that Vincent and the staff had gathered near the kitchen, watching with the same investment they'd shown that Christmas Eve. Marie stood beside Vincent, her hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," Elena breathed. "Yes, Nathaniel. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him up into a kiss as applause erupted around them. Vincent appeared with champagne, Marie brought out a cake they'd clearly prepared in advance, and the entire restaurant celebrated like family. Later, as they sat together in the glow of candlelight, Elena studied the ring on her finger. "I can't believe you did this here. At the same table." "This is where our story began," Nathaniel said. "Where I learned that patience and faith can lead to miracles. Where you showed me that being late doesn't mean being wrong. Sometimes it means being exactly where you need to be, exactly when you need to be there." Elena leaned against his shoulder, watching the city lights twinkle in the gathering dusk. "I used to think I'd given up everything for other people. For Liam, for the animals, for everyone who needed me. But I realize now that all those choices, all those sacrifices, they led me here. To you. To us." "You didn't give anything up," Nathaniel said softly. "You were just waiting for the right person to give something back." 1 year later. The tradition had begun without discussion, as if they'd both understood instinctively what needed to happen. At 5 o'clock, Elena arrived at Le Lumiere alone. She wore a deep green dress and the silver necklace that had been her grandmother's. Vincent greeted her like an old friend, showing her to table 7, their table, permanently reserved on Christmas Eve. She ordered wine, checked her watch, waited. Across the restaurant, other diners smiled knowingly. Some were regulars who'd heard the story. Others were first-timers who sensed something special about the woman sitting alone by the window, checking her watch with a small smile playing at her lips. At 7:30, Nathaniel walked through the door. Their eyes met across the restaurant, and Elena felt the same electric thrill she'd experienced that first night. The recognition, the connection, the sense of coming home. He walked to their table slowly, deliberately, extending every moment of anticipation. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said as he did every Christmas Eve. "You're worth the wait," Elena replied as she always did. He kissed her hand, the one wearing both an engagement ring and a wedding band now, and sat across from her. They ordered dinner, shared stories from their week, laughed at inside jokes that only they understood. At home, in the modest house they'd bought in Queens, close to the shelter, close to Liam's school, Bear slept on his favorite couch. The elderly shepherd had defied all expectations, thriving under the care of his adopted family. He'd become something of a mascot at the shelter, visiting regularly to inspire hope in other animals waiting for their second chances. Liam, now 18 and preparing for college, was spending Christmas Eve with Sophia and her family, giving Elena and Nathaniel their annual tradition. He'd adapted to his new brother-in-law with surprising ease, won over by Nathaniel's genuine interest in his life and his willingness to embarrass himself at video games he didn't understand. As dinner wound down, Vincent brought out a small cake, complimentary as it was every Christmas Eve, with 2 candles representing the 2 years since their first meeting. To waiting, Nathaniel toasted, raising his glass. To showing up late, Elena added with a smile. To finding each other exactly when we were meant to, they said together. Around them, the restaurant glowed with Christmas lights, and outside, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall. But Elena and Nathaniel only had eyes for each other, lost in the miracle of a love that had begun with patience, grown through understanding, and flourished into something that neither had dared to imagine. 5 years later, the story had become legend at La Lumiere. Vincent told it to every couple who reserved table 7, sharing the tale of the billionaire who waited and the woman who was worth waiting for. Proposals happened there regularly now, inspired by the magic of that first Christmas Eve. Elena had finished her veterinary degree and opened a small practice that specialized in shelter medicine, providing low-cost care to animals whose owners couldn't afford traditional treatment. Nathaniel had shifted his investments toward animal welfare organizations, using his wealth to create systemic change in how shelters were funded and operated. Liam had graduated college and was pursuing his own dreams, but he returned every Christmas Eve to celebrate with his sister and brother-in-law, usually arriving early to claim the best seat for watching Elena's late arrival. And Bear, against all odds, still thrived at 10 years old, gray-muzzled and content, the living embodiment of second chances. On their 5th Christmas Eve following the tradition, Elena sat at table 7 as usual, waiting. But this year, something was different. Her hand rested on her stomach, where their first child grew, a secret she'd only just confirmed that morning, a Christmas gift she couldn't wait to share. When Nathaniel arrived, she didn't wait for their usual script. She stood, pulled him close, and whispered the news against his ear. His face transformed with joy, wonder, and something that looked like the same faith he'd shown that very first night, the belief that good things come to those who wait, that patience is rewarded, that love is worth every moment of uncertainty. "We're going to have a baby," he said aloud, not caring that the entire restaurant could hear. Applause erupted. Vincent brought champagne, sparkling cider for Elena, and toasted to new beginnings. Marie, now the restaurant's manager, cried openly. Other diners congratulated them, strangers united by the magic of the moment. Later, as they walked home through softly falling snow, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that first disastrous, perfect night to this moment of new life and endless possibility. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd left?" she asked quietly. "If you'd given up after an hour or 2 hours? If you decided I wasn't worth waiting for?" Nathaniel pulled her closer. "Never. From the moment I sat down at that table, some part of me knew. You were the wait I'd been preparing for my entire life. Everything before that night was just prologue. Elena smiled, tucking herself against his warmth. I used to think being late was my biggest flaw. That I could never get the timing right, never show up when I was supposed to. And now I think maybe timing isn't about being early or late. It's about arriving exactly when you're meant to, exactly where you need to be. She paused, looking up at him. I was 3 hours late to our first date, but I was right on time for the rest of our lives. Nathaniel kissed her forehead, and they continued walking through the snow-covered city, leaving 2 sets of footprints that would eventually be covered but had, for this moment, marked their path. Behind them, the Lumiere glowed with warm light. Table 7 sat empty now, waiting for next Christmas Eve, waiting for the next chapter of their story. Because some things were worth waiting for. Some loves required patience, faith, and the courage to stay when logic said to leave. And sometimes, being late was exactly when you were meant to arrive. Because the person waiting for you understood that true love isn't measured in minutes or hours, but in the willingness to wait through every delay, every detour, every unexpected moment that makes the eventual meeting even sweeter. As snow continued to fall on Christmas Eve, Elena and Nathaniel walked home to their dog, their life, their future. And somewhere in the city, another couple was discovering that patience could lead to miracles, that waiting could be an act of faith, that love often arrived on its own schedule, late, unexpected, and absolutely perfect. 20 years later, Table 7 at La Lumiere had become hallowed ground. Vincent had long since retired, passing the restaurant to his daughter, who maintained the tradition with the same reverence. The story was told to every generation of staff, every new diner who wondered why that particular table felt special. Elena and Nathaniel still returned every Christmas Eve, though now they were joined by their children. 3 in total, each one named after someone who'd played a role in bringing their parents together. Their eldest daughter, Vincent Marie, knew the story by heart and delighted in watching her parents recreate that first night. Bear had passed peacefully in his sleep years ago, but his memory lived on in the foundation Elena and Nathaniel had established in his name, an organization that had saved thousands of animals and changed the landscape of shelter medicine nationwide. Liam, married now with children of his own, still arrived early every Christmas Eve to claim his favorite seat, never tiring of the tradition that had given him a brother, a family, and proof that love could heal even the deepest losses. And every year, without fail, Elena arrived at 5 and Nathaniel at 7:30. They ordered wine, shared dinner, and celebrated the night that had taught them the most important lesson of their lives. Sometimes being late is exactly when you're meant to arrive. And sometimes, waiting is the truest act of love. The end. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazy and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.